Welcome back, Venturers. It's time for another discussion about VN. I am Emar, and together with Taurus we bring something new to the channel today. A response episode. There is a delightful content creator named Amelie Doree who makes amazing analysis votes for various VNs, especially older ones. We've decided to make a response to the vote titled, and I quote, "Revisiting the Denpa game that invented visual novels," end quote, which talks about Shizuku. Before we start, I want to stress this point. Please support the original creator. Go subscribe there. You won't regret it. We want to do this response the most responsibly we possibly could. So Taurus, where do we start?
Yes. As some of you might know, Shizuku recently received a fan-made English translation a few months ago, and as such, a whole bunch of English readers were able to experience this very interesting visual novel. But Amelie Doree has an amazing YouTube channel where it includes an analysis video about Shizuku. And it's very well done. She makes a lot of amazing points, so again, I want to stress everyone, please go check out her channel and watch the video. Also, we're doing this episode as a response to that Shizuku video, so doubly so, please check that out first before having any idea of what exactly we're mentioning here. To summarize, Amelie's video about Shizuku makes a lot of great points. She mentions that it has great prose, it has solid music and art, but as anyone else who's read Shizuku knows, it really drops the ball about its story and what exactly its themes are trying to accomplish. Shizuku is ultimately not a very good visual novel. I mean, you found that out pretty recently, didn't you, Amar?
Wow, way to out me like that. Yes, in preparation for this episode, after your not so glorious endorsement last time we had a read report, I picked it up. I completed that, Shizuku, and my thoughts on this visual novel can be best summarized as Now,
a very heartfelt
this.
Huh.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if I could be even more Slavic, I would say like, kurwa. But basically, I was just let down. I felt like there was too much condensed into little time, everything in a span of one evening. We'll get to that. We'll get to that momentarily. I approached the video in question for the preparation for this episode, thinking, oh God, this will be something that truly shows to me what I missed. But no, honestly, when I've listened to the video, I agree with pretty much everything there. So I'm like, wait, that was way more critical video than I expected. Yeah, I wonder how today's episode will go.
Yes. Now, of course, one thing we want to say to our viewers is that this is going to be a spoilerish episode. We are going to be talking about a lot of the deeper plot points of Shizuku, so if you're someone who is going to experience Shizuku yourself, or if you don't really care and you're just willing to hear about the plot points anyways, I just want to give a heads up that there will be spoilers. Now, after saying that, Amelie's video also had a lot of great analysis about Shizuku's themes. The most pressing one she talked about was all of the issues about trauma. And like you said, I came in very interested and not knowing too much about Shizuku aside from what I had read myself, and came away with a very deep understanding of the trauma involved. It's just something that I never really considered, either in a vacuum nor about how Shizuku handled it, and the way Amelie described it was very informative. So, huge thumbs up to that. The reason, though, that I wanted to do a response video so much is because there's something I disagree with about Amelie's very informative video, in that at the end, she does remark, her closing thoughts about Shizuku is that it is an empty, cowardly story. To be specific, she quotes it as an empty, hollow shell of a story. Although she is right in a variety of ways about this title and the many ways it fails, I think that is a little too harsh about it, to say that it doesn't accomplish anything worthwhile. Because one of its aspects that I think she overlooked in her video is the theme of love in Shizuku. That's kind of what I wanted to discuss in this video itself. Now, just to be clear, Shizuku is not a good VN. It's going to feel a little weird going into some sort of literary analysis stuff about a work that has little literary merit in just all the ways it is not a good story at all. And so it's going to be a little awkward, but hey, sometimes you just got to work with what you're dealt with. The most pressing part about Shizuku is in examining its themes, especially the ways it ties into all of the different routes and endings. And I think this is the crux of, the point that I disagree with Amelie, is that in her video, she only really covered the true ending, which is mostly Ruriko's route. And I think this does miss out on a lot of the character growth and just the examples and endings and mindsets that we get from the main character. In the beginning...
You know what?
Oh, yeah, go for it, Amar.
I want to stress out one part, and I'll push you back a little bit on that front. I feel like the true route is the retelling of how it canonically happened, so to speak, right? So I felt like that's the best basis for that video to analyze what it tried to achieve, the visual novel tried to achieve. Now, granted, the video itself also acknowledges some parts of other character routes that can be meaningful. If I remember correctly, on the video, there was a quote to read Mizuho because it has some great character development, as well as on Ruriko's route. It has a very interesting take on fate for the perceived life, the regular gray life of what is expected of ordinary citizens. So I think in the video it is acknowledged, but you are correct that it focuses on the true route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few of the other routes are acknowledged, mostly in that how similar they are in textual content to the other routes. It's still so okay, weird. It's so weird that Shizuku acts like you're hearing this information for the first time in the different routes. And it's like, no, it's the same stuff. It's literally the same events. Why are you making me reread this? You are right that she mentioned it, and actually I was going to mention this later, is that Amelie does address that Sayori's route kind of has some heavy-handed monologues about loving life and seeing the joy in the little things. But I do think that is part of my flawed aspects that I took issue with the analysis, is that how she glazed over this part. But anyways, we'll get there. In the beginning, what does the main character want? A lot of things happen to the main character. Yes, he gets roped into the investigation, and he's talking with some of the girls, and then as things get pear-shaped, he, starts putting his life on the line, and then he develops these psychoelectric waves and all sorts of Denpa stuff, yada yada. But I think if you take a step back and look at this main character as more than just, the self-insert, bland main character that he usually is, you get some aspects that stick out. And, the most striking one, that's pretty unique to Shizuku, is that our main character has his delusions. He has these very vivid fantasies of getting lost in, apocalyptic disaster, and all of the death and destruction it causes to the people around him, ultimately even him imagining blowing up the whole world. This is pretty much the most unique aspect of our main character. And in fact, when he's on the rooftop with his uncle, and his uncle asks him, hey, can you, help out with this investigation? Even if you, the reader, picks the choice to agree, our main character, Yusuke, he still kind of grumbles about it. He's like, okay, I guess I'll go along with it. He's not terribly interested. But we do get to see in his inner thoughts that the most pressing reason he agreed is because, Kaneko, went through the door to insanity. His crazy classmate, who had a mental breakdown, had something in her eyes that our main character just deeply desired. That whole door to insanity is kind of the main crux of why he does anything in this VN. I think the funniest part, actually, in the early sections, like the best unintentional comedy, is that our main character, Yusuke, his class ends, and he's standing there thinking, okay, well, now what should I do about this investigation? I have Mizuho, who had something to talk to me about. I have this girl, Sayori, who says she saw something. I could interview her. But you know what? There was that weird girl, Ruriko, on the rooftop, talking about this Dempa Wave stuff. Oh my god, I'm so interested in her. I want to talk to her. And she has nothing to do with this investigation. It's so funny that, like, that's the most passion he shows in the like daytime investigation part, is just, who was that weird girl? I need to know about these psychoelectric waves.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm getting at here is that we get to see these little glimpses into the kind of mindset and personality that our main character has. He's not... This is the one thing that makes him different than the most generic main character self-insert blank slate that you'll ever see.
But I have a question then on that point. Past the point of his interest in the doors to insanity, and once you get to the interrogation part, talking with Saori and Mizuha, don't you feel like that's the last time you seen the uniqueness of protagonist?
Yes, and unfortunately, this is kind of the part where I have to admit Shizuku is not a good story.
Sure.
We at that point, and maybe you could extend it to that time where he's eating the fast food, and then he has another one of his delusions. What?
Yeah.
What? That was
Meat.
good. He just goes off about meat.
Yeah, but it's good in a B-movie style good.
Very true, very true. And so far, all of what I've said is kind of tying into what Amelie says in her analysis video. However, this is the one distinction I want to make, in that in the various endings, whether we go through Mizuho's route, Saori's route, or, Ruriko's true route, there's a variety of good and bad ends. The bad ends are usually along the lines of him, becoming a husk or dying or whatever. But in the good ends, we see a change in the main character. The main character survived, the heroine of the route is alive, and it's a bright day, and it's lovey-dovey, and it's all wonderful as proper for the happy ending. But all of these happy endings also have one element in common. They all end with a real sappy monologue about how life is just beautiful. Life is wonderful. Our main character, he looks at the sunset and it's like, this world is a beautiful place. And yes, life might be boring and colorless and meaningless, but it's up to us to have that joy in life. All of these happy endings, they really beat you over the head. That our main character is now a very different person than the Yusuke he was at the beginning of Shizuku. He has character growth. And unfortunately, again, Shizuku sucks, and at some point, we kind of should have seen this character arc in Shizuku. It's kind of just all thrown up in the air that at some point in this horror investigation, he finds love with the heroine, and this is apparently what changed him. But we never get to see it. We never even have any of that build
know
up.
what?
We just
That's
have those
actually
stupid erotic scenes just shoved in.
But you are right. Now that you said it out loud, I realize that's true. However, out of the blue, that development was ultimately off screen. I mean, the entire VN was a speedrun from "Who are you?" to "Now I'm madly in love with you" to an ending "Love has changed me for the better."
And I mean, it's not even a speed run in that they race through all the steps. It's more so it's a speed run because they cut out all of that stuff. It's literally just start and then middle and then end. In fact, I take it back. I don't even think there's a middle. In Shizuku, it's literally just, hey, I met you for the first time and you're helping with the investigation, and then they're banging. It's like, while they're confessing their love for each other. And I'm like, where the heck did all of that come from? So if Shizuku were better written, we would actually have that feeling. We would get to see the romantic connection between the two. I know it tries in some of the routes when the heroines talk about their history or their relationships with some of the characters. But again, there's none of that romance. There's none of that connection there. But the fact remains, Shizuku tried to make that connection. Because in the end goal, in all of those good endings, they spell out the character arc that never happened. True, it really fumbled that whole connection and the learning to love in the first place, but by the time we reach to the end, they're making it clear to us that Yusuke has the light in his eyes again. In fact, some of the endings, they practically... They rub it right in your face that he sees the door to insanity in his mind pulling away, and he smiles.
Don't you feel this only fuels your ammunition for more aspos to quote? Because I feel like this is out of nowhere.
Yes. However, that's not the point I'm arguing. It's like, yes, it is
Fair
out of
enough,
nowhere,
fair enough.
it's poorly built, and I have no
fair.
reason to believe that it's natural. But it does exist.
Exactly. Okay, that's true. I cannot take away its existence. I'm just saying its artificiality makes it so hard to believe. I mean, I cannot deny it does, given the fact that it has been presented, but it's just so cheap that it cheapens the whole message.
You know what? You might be right on that front. This might be such a cheap theme that it's like, well, does it have any merit? Is it still an empty, hollow shell of a story? And to be honest, you might still hear this argument about love and still decide that, yeah, Shizuku is still an empty, hollow shell of a story. That is fair. But I still want to bring it to attention.
Okay. Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Mm-hmm. And because that also really ties into one of Amelie's strongest complaints about Shizuku, is about a moment in Juriko's true ending. She talks extensively about it in her video, and again, I deeply recommend everyone to check out her video about it so you can hear her thoughts, straight from the source. But it revolves around the scene where our main character, Yusuke, uses his newfound Denpa powers to mind wipe several of the girls' memories so that they don't remember any of the horrible stuff that happened. Now, I'm going to agree with Amelie, is that that's just not how it works. From a practicality standpoint, it's horribly misguided and will probably cause more harm than good in a realistic sense.
You don't understand he was the master of Denpa ways, okay?
Ay. However, my analysis of that scene is that while all of that stuff that Amelie said is true, the real point of it is in the intention. The point of this is to highlight that here we are at the end of Shizuku, and Yusuke is doing this out of the goodness of his heart. This is something completely alien to the Yusuke of the beginning. He now has these otherworldly powers that he could abuse for all sorts of his own selfish reasons, and instead, what does he do? He uses these powers to help others. Again, you can argue that this doesn't help at all, and this is really sick and fucked up. And okay, yes, that's all true. The intention is that he's using his powers out of consideration to give a better life to these girls who he just met the other day, who aren't going to thank him for it because, they forgot about it, and who will probably never talk to him again. And yet the intention is that Yusuke did this to help others. It's supposed to highlight that he has come such a far way from who he was at the beginning when he was wishing death and destruction to all, indiscriminately.
I'm trying to remember precisely the wording and in the translation, but I feel like it also has been stressed. This is the last wave he pulsates, I guess, or releases, which could imply that's not only he uses his supernatural powers instead of destructive means, like he talked about at the beginning, now in a beneficial, but also this is the last time he uses them, if I read that correctly.
Yeah, same thing. I'm not sure if he meant it as it's the last time he can use it, because it's like he's using the last spurt of his power or something, or if he's just consciously locking it away and just telling himself, I'm never going to use this again. So I'm not sure on the specific either, but either way...
But, my point was, he was doing the last use of his superpowers to help people and stop using those superpowers, even though it could manifest his delusions.
Yeah, because either way, it's
changed in such a way that he gives it up, sees the value in life. So I see that. Yeah,
either way of how you interpret it, it's just degrees of how committed he is to doing something good with this. Again, you can definitely argue that he does more harm than good, and you're probably right. I agree with Amelie's analysis. Again, it may be poorly handled, but I do think it serves a purpose in that his intentions were good, that he was trying to help others. You don't see this any clearer than what happens in the toaster ending. And yeah, this is another one of my points against Amelie's video, is that a toaster ending is one of the most interesting parts of Shizuku, and yet we didn't get to see her talk about it at all. I was like, no. But in short, the toaster ending is what happens when he basically rejects all of the heroine's possibilities for love throughout the VN. I mentioned before that, apparently at some point, love changes him. And we don't really get to see that happen because Shizuku is not well written. But still, apparently that's what happened. Well, this is an ending where our main character doesn't experience any of that, where he turned away Mizuho and Sayori, and things went south with him and Ruriko. So instead, our main character still manages to save the day. He's unlocked these new Denpa powers, and we get to see what happens when he doesn't change, when the power of love doesn't affect who he is. Instead of any of that, we get a Yusuke who is disassociating even more from reality. Withdrawn into his own delusions, his Denpa powers are now causing problems for the people around him in greater and greater scope. And when he turns on the TV to see the news of what's happening with all these people, passing out and having problems, either he can't or he won't make the connection that this is his fault. That he is becoming the very thing that he hated about Takuya. This is an ending where Yusuke becomes the villain instead. And we even see it in that, it's called the toaster ending because the toast pops up and he's like, wait, I didn't turn the toaster, I didn't plug the toaster in. And it's so how he's slipping more and more into this door of insanity that he loves so much.
I would like to add to one point that you made, that he becomes the villain that he hated, and unconsciously uses the power to do harm, exactly as in delusions at the start. But surely it is just a gas leak, a VN staple, right?
Oh my god, MR, yeah. Yep, of course, it's a gas leak. That's how everything goes. Any sort of public disturbance, cover up, gas
It
leak.
must have been a gas leak, I guess.
But yes, this toaster ending demonstrates what happens when our main character, Yusuke, doesn't have the power of love. When he does have the power of love, it changes him into being a more healthy, considerate, loving individual. And thus, I do think that Shizuku has one of its biggest overarching themes to be the power of love. Even though it's not well written, we don't get to see any of it built up, and so the reader doesn't really find it believable. But it still exists. If anyone wants to think that Shizuku still remains an empty, hollow shell of a story, to be honest, I can see your point. I would agree with you in some ways, but this whole power of love is a factor that deserves consideration, because it is one of the few overarching themes that we get to see in so many parts of Shizuku, in various endings, inherent to the main character himself, and really the final message that this VN tries to leave us with the entire time. I think the power of love is a heartfelt message, whether or not it succeeded in reaching the audience. So those are my overarching thoughts about Shizuku and about how Amelie addresses all of these topics in Shizuku. Again, this VN kind of sucks. I'm glad it's influential in its own ways, and it provided a lot of food for thought, but again, a lot of what Amelie criticized about this are very valid. I agree.
Quite full for snack. It was more of a for thought. It was more of a snack for thought.
Snark for thought. Oh my gosh.
Snack, as in quick snack.
Oh, and a snack.
Real food. But honestly, my final recommendation for this game is I recommend people to avoid it.
Brutal. I do think it has a very interesting place in history. And of course, Amelie again goes into far greater detail. Please check out her video. It also leads in part to why that whole, there's the quotes in her titles about how this, invented visual novels. Very interesting stuff.
Exactly. I definitely recommend going to Amelie Doree and listening to this video analysis. Is freaking amazing. And avoid the Shizuku VN. Please, just do yourself a favor.
Rude. But yeah, do you have anything else to say, Amor?
I'll sort of my final thoughts and recommendation. Not necessarily. I almost went and opened my path to madness reading this VN and its lack of quality of life features. So that was interesting emotional response when I was grappling with the UI itself. Don't get me started on how gallery was implemented, okay? That's just, no. That's a prehistoric era of how to handle gallery.
Hey, you can visit all of those CGs and illustrations again, but it has to be one at a time in a row. In PowerPoint-esque presentation. Great. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Exactly. Well, yes, thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully you've thought some more about a very important visual novel in the whole industry, Shizuku.
Yeah, I would also like to thank Amelie Doree video for inspiring this response video to all our listeners for listening in, and please tell us in the comments what you thought about Denpa, especially this topic here. And with that, venture out.
Venture out.